Feel free to clink and clack. That's something that happens here at the Press Club at lunchtime. But looking forward to this conversation and really pleased with how things have been going today. And thank you for everybody online for joining us. It's my pleasure to bring to the stage my friend of 25 years, and started counting that the other day, and I was like, did we meet in college? But the Michigan's Congresswoman from the 6th District, Debbie Dingell. Congresswoman, please applaud. There's no number of times you can't applaud for Debbie Dingell. Congresswoman Dingell should be no stranger to most of you. She is a frequent guest on MSNBC's Morning Joe and the major network Sunday news shows. She serves on the Energy and Commerce Committee and the Natural Resources Committee, where she leads on critical issues, including affordable and accessible health care, clean energy and water, domestic manufacturing, and supply chain resilience, as well as protecting our wildlife and natural resources. And if you're from Michigan, you know all of those things are critical to the state. She understands the need to address today's pressing housing challenges, which is why she is co-sponsor of the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act and the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act. Before being elected to Congress, Congresswoman Dingell, a self-proclaimed car girl, and as a car guy, I totally appreciate that, worked in the auto industry for over 3 decades, where she was president of the General Motors Foundation and a senior executive responsible for public affairs. For those of us who've been involved in community development issues in Detroit, she's also widely appreciated as a passionate booster for the city's recovery and the ultimate behind-the-scenes fixer. Many of my personal skills navigating difficult political terrain I learned from her, who you could count on quietly sitting in the back of the room with her ever-present iPad and texting or emailing senior members of the White House staff, members of Congress, and the most influential union leaders or corporate C-suite influencers. Since her election to Congress in 2018, Congresswoman Dingell has been a major player in the Democratic leadership and the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus. I'm looking forward to hearing her views on the election, the future of the Democratic Party, prospects for bipartisanship in a highly partisan political environment, and whether the affordable housing crisis can bring the parties together around real solutions. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome Debbie Dingell. Thank you so much.
David.
See?
This.
So, thank you again for joining us, and it's there are a few things that have happened since the last time we chatted.
So dull. Nothing happening.
I heard it's a Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times. So here we are. In the 2016 election, you were one of the few people warning about vulnerabilities in the blue wall, which I think now is the purple wall, urging the party to invest resources in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Advice that was not heeded. This year, while significant resources were allocated, Republicans managed to sweep the swing states. Where did Democrats go wrong, and what did Republicans do effectively?
So it's really great to be here with all of you. And this is a question that many people are asking. In 2016, some of you, I look out and see some who know me, I said for a straight year, Hillary Clinton's in trouble in Michigan, and I said, correctly predicted she would not win the primary, and by October of that year said she was not going to win Michigan. And everybody yelled at me, everybody ignored at me, I was Miss Unpopular. This year, if you saw me in October, I was being yelled at regularly by some of our senior I'll just say a senior senator, you can put the name with it, might have one similar to mine, who was telling me, stop being so negative, when I said, she hasn't won Michigan yet. And if you were somebody that, I am somebody that every weekend tries to do, I'm always at a farmer's market, or 4 or 5.
We're on Facebook. She is always at a farmer's market.
I love farmers markets because, I mean, everybody goes there, and I don't go with anybody. I just go myself, and people, they know me now, and they tell me what they're thinking. I'm in a union hall. I'm in a veterans hall. I try to get to a school. And I go where real people are. And if you were doing that, I mean, and I go to Kroger, which is the Michigan grocery store, every Sunday morning to return my bottles, and everybody knows that I'll be at Kroger at Sunday morning, and they're telling me how they can't afford their groceries. They're telling me how much a dozen eggs are, and we were not, I mean, I was telling the Biden White House while he was still the candidate, it's the economy. And the economy is a big word that, like, I mean, you've seen some even ads of people saying, what does the economy mean, Dad? Here's the reality. For too many Americans, they couldn't afford their groceries. Eggs were too expensive. Milk had gone up. Gasoline prices were high. The rent was sky high. They couldn't afford to buy a home. And everyday economics was driving this election. And they were blaming the people that were in the White House. And we, as Democrats, didn't understand it, didn't address it correctly. And I really do believe that was part of the problem.
And what did Republicans do right? Because I think a lot of people were focused on style as opposed to substance and what was actually happening in the country. But how did Trump connect, especially with groups that the Republicans don't traditionally connect with?
Well, first of all, you know what? I think people are tired of politicians, especially people that aren't real. And Donald Trump, for all that he is real. You know exactly who he is, what he's going to do. You don't know what outrageous thing is going to come next, but it's Donald Trump. He's real. I kept saying to the campaign, let her out. Get out. Stop wrapping her in bubble wrap. Bring her into a union hall. Let those union hall members just see who she really is. And they want to see the authentic person. They want to know who that person is and what they're really going to fight for. So, for starters, Donald Trump is Donald Trump, and he is out there. He goes places. He's just, and I think people want that. A lesson that Democrats also have to really realize is that where people are going, where they're getting their news, where they're getting their facts or non-facts, misinformation, is changing. So if you've looked, there have been some studies that have come out this week that show that Kamala Harris won with people that watch cable news. But most people didn't watch cable news. They're getting their information from social media and on different it's everything from YouTube and Twitter to new platforms and from podcasts, etc. And we got to go, Democrats sometimes are, and you can't use, you have to be very careful. You can't use these general assumptions all of the time. I think at the presidential level, they kept the candidate protected. And she didn't go out and do, but members of Congress, Republican and Democrats, each campaign in different ways. I think those that allowed themselves to talk to people, to hear, meet with people, be real, knew what was on people's minds, and those are the ones that did well.
People can tell authenticity when they see it, and if you don't let them see it, I think her campaign did not let them see it, they see that too. It's transparent one way or another. So industrial Midwest, that's really what we're talking about when we talk about what was the blue wall. What's the key to really gaining traction from a Democratic perspective to really communicate and speak to people who are dealing with the issues that we face today in the Midwest?
So, I mean, I call it the heartland, and the heartland grows things and makes things, and people don't really. California obviously has a very strong agriculture industry, but Michigan, after California, has the most diverse agricultural product in the country, and the heartland is where much of the country is fed from. But what I think that the 2016 election was all about trade. People didn't realize that. I kept saying to Hillary Clinton, if you don't talk about trade, if you don't go out NAFTA, and by the way, Donald Trump liked me at first. I wish he didn't know who I was by face and name, but he does. But I said he was going to win, so therefore he liked me, and then I worked with him on trade. I thought that NAFTA was one of the worst bills we had ever done. We had outsourced all of our jobs, and there were workers across this country who were insecure, didn't know what was going to happen. We had seen town after town that had been dependent on companies that had been moved to Mexico or to Asia, and it's still the issue. By the way, we have worked in these last few years. I worked with Donald Trump, and I worked very hard. I thought Bob Lighthouser was a good trade representative. And I, by the way, say to my colleagues who get up and say, tariffs are a bad thing, and they're going to raise everybody's prices. And there may be an element of that, but not all tariffs are bad. And tariffs are a tool in the toolbox. And the fact of the matter is that the outsourcing this country has done, which people did not understand until COVID, when we could not get masks, gloves, or gowns in this country. It at all. I mean, I was on the phone with people in China that I knew, sending them to a plant before a hospital was going to make a $2 million payment to look at the quality of what was being made there. We can never let that happen again. And right now, we're way too dependent on India and China and India, for 80-90% of our medicine is made there. It's not only an economic security issue, it's a national security issue. And we've got to bring our manufacturing capability back to this country. We got to bring our supply chains back to this country. And I think so that some of those issues of 2016 continue to be issues of 2024. And I think it's, we're watching things that there are a lot of very complicated issues as we talk about trade and manufacturing, and we have almost no steel capacity left in this country. I'm someone that supports tariffs on steel and does not support the purchase of U.S. steel by Japan, because I don't think that's good for us. What you have is foreign countries charging lower prices as they knock people out of the market. Then they have a monopoly and prices go up. And that's not in the consumer's interest. So now you get increased prices for consumer goods, and the jobs are overseas, not in America. That's one of the things we've really got to take head on. And I will work with Donald Trump on that.
So trade policy is an area where there's agreement, and there is consistency between the Biden administration and the previous Trump administration policy.
Some things. Let's not.
In the trade space, I think there's more than less. Tell me about climate, because people are worried about climate. There's obvious issues in terms of the impact of climate. And one of the things I always try to explain to people is, when you go to a coal miner and you say that we're done with coal, you're telling him you are never going to work again. And your kids probably aren't either, unless they move away from home. And I don't think we've ever been able to get the conversation in a place where it's not a zero-sum game. So how do we think about, we balance them, you're in energy and commerce, how do we balance those things?
I think this is a very complicated topic. I do think global climate is real. I I had azaleas blooming in both of my yards, both here and in Michigan. And then, we had a foot of snow, and the azaleas died this weekend. Azaleas aren't supposed to be blooming in November. You really do see that global climate's real, and this is going to be a problem for the Trump administration, is the weather patterns we've been having, the wildfires that have not only been in California, but have been in Canada and New York, and in many places we haven't seen them. The devastating storms that we've seen in the Midwest, the flooding, which is really impacting housing issues. The hurricanes, which, has devastated Florida, but North Carolina, Georgia, other states. And these disasters require the administration to be addressing these issues. I can't decide what this president is about to be new president is going to do. He does care about the economy. Musk is his trusted advisor for the moment. Well, I'll behave, not make editorial comments.
Go for it.
But he makes EVs. I mean, the fact of the matter is that for a thriving auto industry, a domestic auto industry, you're competing in a global marketplace. You have to build EVs. The global market wants EVs. The companies are scared to death of, not those companies. Every company in America, every CEO in America is scared to death of what Donald Trump could do to them, the wrath of God that could descend on every minute. So everybody's tiptoeing around. What every company wants is consistency. So it's a very odd time right now. But the companies have quietly said, the EV subsidies do make a difference, and they do help you be competitive. Here's the reality. China is trying to destroy our EV market. They are subsidizing their products in China. They're looking at building plants in Mexico and then trying to bring them in as North America product, which we will not do. And I will work with Donald Trump to make sure that we amend the USMCA to make sure that never happens. But what they're trying to do is destroy our market and then come in, have the monopoly, and take over prices. We can't do that. So Donald Trump didn't like EVs during the campaign, but, how much is he going to listen? What's that? I don't know.
Elon likes them.
Well, I know, that's my point.
Yeah.
So I can't tell. But Elon doesn't like labor, and
No.
Donald Trump does. I mean, we got a lot of interesting moments ahead of us. I'm trying to stay calm. Hope I'm not on the enemies list, and I want to work with them.
Is there a list, or is it just freestyle?
I don't know. That's another thing we don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I am hoping that there are things that we can get done. I'm anybody who knows me knows that I've always reached across the aisle. I believe in working with Republicans. I think the American people are tired of the partisan bickering. I think that's part of the message that they were sending, like, hey, you're not solving our problems, solve our problems. That they want to see us work together. I mean, if he does things that are really horrific or damaging or hurt people, I will stand up. I'm not a quiet woman when I think something's wrong, which is the reason I think he doesn't like me some days. But, and I'm trying to make a joke out of it because I really don't know what the new administration is going to be like and what is going to happen. I have colleagues in the Congress that I have deep respect for, that I think I will be able to work with on a number of issues that matter to the American people, and that is what I want to focus on.
So what is that going to look like? Because you've been a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus. You've been a problem solver before there were Problem Solvers Caucus. And we have had a very narrow margin. Now, Speaker Johnson, who I'm pretty sure has the worst job in Washington, maybe in the country, who has to navigate this 2-vote margin on a day when everybody's well and shows up.
Which is positive thinking.
what is that going to look like? And how are the Democrats, is it just going to be straight opposition, or how are we going to actually work together? Is that possible
I
right
think
now?
that Hakeem has attempted to send a message that when it makes sense, we will, we're not going to blanketly say no to everything. I do think that if there are things that we believe are destructive to the country, are not constitutional, enemies list, things that'll hurt the communities that we represent, we will stand united. But I think it is very important that we not react every single day to whatever it is that gets done that day. You're not effective. You're not going to be effective in taking on the issues that super matter. And I really do think there's some things that we've got to get done.
So speaking about getting done and housing, there are two bills. You co-sponsored both of them. Neighborhood Homes Investment Act, which I think is probably the most important piece of legislation for neighborhoods in Detroit and in southeastern Michigan, and in a lot of rural areas too. Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act and LIHTC, which if you want to avoid gentrification, there is no better way to do that than building LIHTC where you're having recovery. There's going to be the, reconciliation scrum. It's probably the best way to describe it. Housing has a big chest full of participant ribbons. We always come in fourth or fifth when three things get done. And how do we get those bills over the finish line? What's the key for us, and what should we be doing?
So I'm going to think out of the box on this a little. Actually, I met David when I was at General Motors years ago when you were at LISC.
Or Fannie Mae.
Fannie
running
Mae.
The office
He
there.
was he ran
Yeah.
Fannie Mae. And at General Motors, I was trying to save Detroit.
Yep.
And I knew that the neighborhoods were the key.
That was before Dan moved down even.
Oh, yeah. I remember I had to talk to Dan about the neighborhoods.
He got the message, because by the time we had the Blight Task Force, he was preaching your gospel.
Oh, no. But anyway, I don't think that if you are listening, and I do think Donald Trump listens. I think I have many issues, and I'm not going to talk about them. What I am going to say is that Donald Trump is very good at knowing what people think, what their worries are. He instinctively reacts to people. And affordable housing is one of the biggest issues we are facing in this country. If you are in a community, if you're talking to everyday people, there is a shortage of affordable housing, period. And it's also critical to the renovation or to the survival of a lot of our larger cities. And young people can't afford to buy a house. So the question is, where is he going to put it on his agenda? Look, I don't think you're going to see much. Look, this is guesses because nobody knows for sure what is really going to happen. But, the budget expires on the 20th. There is no way that we're going to get reconciliation or any kind of real thing done. We will have a continuing resolution that will expire March is the current rumor. We'll see. 3 weeks is a long time of potential negotiation. But what you're not hearing anybody talk about, when we hit the debt ceiling again?
Yeah.
January 1. And we'll do extraordinary measures for a few months, but that will be an immediate crisis. I mean, not immediate, not January, but first 6 months, got to get a budget done, got to get 6 months done. So this administration is going to need, Donald Trump needs to think of, but you need to be working the new Secretary of HUD, who appears to not be as controversial as some of the other, and talking about what the needs are, and talking to the Republican mayors and talking to the Republican members of Congress from your districts or from your states and saying, this is a problem. We need help. Help us make this an issue. And I think if you can get some of the Republicans and the administration to say this really has to happen, we can bring the Democrats along.
I think that this issue of Republican mayors is the biggest untapped capital we have in the housing world. I mean, they totally get it. They are facing housing challenges every single day, and government tools is all they have, and in addition to public-private partnerships. And I think we ignore them at our peril.
I agree. I totally agree. You need to be building those relationships. You need to be bringing them in, and they are a tool in your toolbox that you need to be using to get done what you need to get done. The Republican mayors also have the ability to talk to Republican members of Congress, but I really I say this to people. Everybody loves to come to Washington and meet with members or to try. I prefer meeting at home. One, I see hands-on what's going on. I have more time for a meeting. I'm not worried about a vote being called or a committee meeting or the 25 interruptions that happen in a day. Schedule something at home with your members of Congress, your mayors. That's not going to, it's uninterrupted time. It's a way for you to make the case about, hey, this is what we need.
I think that is the best advice we're going to hear all month. And there are a lot of people in here with boots on the ground, affiliates and organizations that they work with or have offices. That's it. That is the key. We have to talk to people where we can show them what's tangible that we're doing and talk about solutions that are relevant for them.
And you really need to, this is how I met David. However, it was nice of him to say college, but obviously it wasn't just college. But I still remember those tours, and I would call him up and say, hey, can we go do this, and can we go look at this? And he has taught me about housing for decades. And you learn best by being on the ground, seeing what the difference is, talking to the families, telling the stories. Put the human face on this for people, because it's a real problem. I just cannot not believe that Donald Trump, who I do think is not as insulated as everybody thinks he is. I mean, he likes to know what's on people's minds. He tries to meet with different kinds of people. Does not know that affordable housing is a major problem.
So let's, I want to come back to mayors in Detroit, and a remarkable recovery has been going on there. And one of the things that I was saying back in 2013 when we were working on the bankruptcy was the test for Detroit's recovery is that we have never since 1950 made it through a recession and not lost everything we had gained during the previous recovery. And we did that, and we are doing that. When you think about Detroit, particularly with a new mayor on the horizon, Mayor Duggan, I think yesterday announced he's going to be running for governor as an independent.
Today, as an independent.
Which is another interesting thing. I won't ask you to jump into that pool today. But what is the key for a city like Detroit or other cities like it, where Detroit is caught up to many other cities, to keep that momentum going and to work with the federal government, the state government, and businesses, where you've overlapped all of those things?
So look, let's be honest. You got to have jobs, and you got to have business. You got to have a tax base, and you got to have business investment. Detroit's going through changes, but this was true before I left General Motors. David may remember this. It was 2008, and the bankruptcy was going on, and there were people that wanted to pull GM out of Detroit, and people thought I was crazy I will be really honest. I went directly to the president and said, you cannot let that happen. And that is pretty much what did happen. To be perfectly frank, they were told they couldn't leave. Now, businesses are changing. That employees, it's going to be interesting to see how well the Trump administration does trying to get people to go back to the office. But let's just be honest, in whatever city we're in, whoever we are, people don't want to be in the office 5 days a week. So the downtown community in Detroit is, the RentCen has been sort of the headquarters of it for, I mean, Henry Ford built it with the downtown group in, what, the 60s?
Yeah. Late 60s, early 70s.
So, but General Motors, and they looked at not staying again, is going to stay. They're moving their headquarters to a new building that's being built on the old Hudson site. And that was very key, keeping them downtown. In the last couple of weeks, there's a lot of discussion of all of this. Probably 2 of the towers at the RentCen are going to be destroyed, and they'll rebuild the other 2. But keeping downtown, keeping business downtown and invested really matters, and that's key. You're starting to see some retail come back, but not enough, to be perfectly frank.
No.
Yeah,
If people are going to live there, they need a place to shop.
that's just, so you've got to bring retail back, and have been working on in terms of that. But there've been a lot of good events. Detroit has hosted the NFL, whatever, lottery.
Yes.
And you can't believe what a success it was. Everybody got a little worried because of, it got pretty political in Michigan on maybe a Mideast issue. And we set records. Nobody else is going to be able to beat that record. The Detroit Lions are doing great now.
They're doing amazing.
Hey, if you're a Detroiter like I have been for my life, seeing the Lions where they are right now is just like, so there's a lot of good stuff. They've had great events, and we're trying to get more big events.
I'm pretty sure we were in elementary school the last time the Lions had a season like this. And the draft was amazing.
The draft was
it really
absolutely amazing.
And Michigan beat Ohio State.
That was a very good day. Sorry, anybody from Ohio.
No, I'm not sorry. But thank you. On that, we have to end on that note. Thank you so much.
Go Blue!
Go Blue.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman Dingell and David, for those insights. We are now going to take a 15-minute break. Our next breakout sessions will begin at 1:15 p.m. The panel, Regulating Rent and the Impact on Renters and Landlords, will take place here in the ballroom. The panel, Adapting to Change, How the Real Estate Compensation Structure Affects Homebuyers, will take place in the MWL rooms, which are again located on the opposite side of the lobby where the AIRS panel was this morning. Thank you.